keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, keep winning, but you only go.
Hey, what's going on, guys? JK, I'm back with another video. Today, we're going to be looking at Mel Kiper and Field Yates' top 10 mock draft. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to kind of keep up with all the NFL content I'm going to be turning out with the draft, free agency, playoffs, Super Bowl, everything like that. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you can keep up with all that. All right, so going into this with Mel Kiper and Field Yates, they actually alternated picks. So Mel Kiper, I believe, has the first pick here, and they're both picking on based on what they think is going to happen in an NFL draft. All right, so Mel Kiper gets the first pick, Field Yates gets the second, and then so on and so forth. So here with the first overall pick, Mel Kiper's acting as the Tennessee Titans. He's acting as if what he thinks will happen, and he takes Cam Ward here in his mock draft. All right, so I actually agree with this pick. I think Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this draft. A lot of QB needy teams in this draft, and I personally think that he's way better than Shedeur Sanders. And if I was a GM, I'm taking Cam Ward any day over Shedeur. Cam Ward, in my opinion, he has great ball placement. A lot of people think he's going to be a project. Yes, he's going to have to develop in the right situation, but just the way that he is in Miami, he's just a ball player that's going to make plays. All right, he can move on his feet. He has a great pocket presence. I think that's really what separates him from Shedeur. He can make plays with his feet. He can make the ball. He's honestly comfortable in any situation. He can put the ball where he needs to. And he just pretty much finds the open guy no matter what. That's kind of what was seen in the bowl game before he got moved out. He was making some crazy plays in this bowl game, in the Pop-Tart Bowl before he kind of sat out the second half. So I actually agree with this. I think he's the best quarterback in this draft, and a quarterback draft that's not very good. I think he has all the tools to do the right thing if you just put him in the right situation, which I think Brian Callahan can do as the Titans head coach. Yeah, I think that they can develop him pretty well. So if I'm the Tennessee Titans, I actually agree with this, and I think I'm going to go Cam Ward as well, just because I think he's just the best quarterback in this class. So moving on to number 2, the Cleveland Browns hold the number 2 overall pick. And in this, Field Yates controlling the Cleveland Browns, he thinks that they're going to be taking Travis Hunter here. Now, a lot of people think, especially with the news that Deshaun Watson now it might miss the 2025 NFL regular season next year. A lot of people think that the Cleveland Browns might go quarterback here. They might go Shedeur Sanders. I'm one of those. I agree with Field Yates' take here. I think Travis Hunter is going to be the best player in the draft. He's the best available player. I'm not taking a risk on a risky quarterback when I have the best player in the draft staring at me in the face. I'm just going to go pick the best player. A lot of people are going to kind of debate whether he's a cornerback or receiver. I think you use him at both in the NFL. I think he can mainly play one or the other. Now, I do think Travis Hunter is going to want to play receiver. He's going to want to go in the receiver just to looking at the contract market, because once he gets around to the second and third contract, he's going to want to make. He's just going to want to get the most money possible. And if you look at the third highest paid receiver to the third highest paid corner, the receiver is going to be making a lot more money. So I think the Cleveland Browns here, I think this would be the right choice for them. Now they could look at some other options like a Shedeur. They could even look at, I think, corner with a Will Johnson, put him across from Denzel Ward, maybe even Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter might be the best player in this draft as well. He's up there after last night's game against Notre Dame. He could be a great fit across from Myles Garrett, but I think you play it safe here. Take the best player on the board, Travis Hunter. Whether you put him at receiver, cornerback, I think Mel Kiper and Field Yates are off to a great start here with the first 2 picks. I think these are the exact picks that I would do. Number 3, I would assume, is going to be Shedeur Sanders to the Giants, and that's what they're going to do. Giants, QB needy team. They need a quarterback. There's only 2 quarterbacks that really are worth it even going in the first round of this draft. That's Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur scares me a lot more, even though people do see him as one of the safe option. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think Cam Ward has the more of the tools. Shedeur is a better quarterback number 1 day in the NFL, but over time, I think he's just gonna get flustered by pressure. He doesn't stay in the pocket very well. a lot of his pressures that he has at Colorado, he's one of the highest pressured quarterbacks. I think that he kind of causes those himself. He takes too far drops. He's looking to make the big home run play every single time just because he just wants to be able to score touchdowns. As an NFL quarterback, you got to be comfortable enough to take those 5 yard completions, the 6 yard completions, because if you add those up, those are what builds drives and gets drives going. So I think here, as the Giants, yes, I need a quarterback. I'm probably taking Shador Sanders. This is probably the perfect spot for it, but I'm not so much of a Shador fan. I feel like it's kind of a reach at this point, but you kind of have to if you're the Giants because you let Daniel Jones go. Brian Dable needs his guy to be able to develop. He going into a big market in New York. I think Shador would love it. That's where I think he wants to go. But so much, there's a lot better players on the board at this point with an Abdul Carter, like I've mentioned before. But it's kind of what you need. You're playing to the fit, so this makes sense to be able to mock it. I even mocked it. These first three are the exact same mocks in my mock draft as well. So I agree with it. I think this is what would happen. So moving on to number 4, you have the New England Patriots. They have the New England Patriots, which might be a shock to some. I'm not as much surprised. Is Will Campbell here? The Patriots had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL last year. Jacoby Brissett took a beating at the beginning of the year. Kind of settled in after a little bit once Drake May got going in there because he could move his feet a little bit more and kind of make a little bit more plays. But I think this makes sense. You got a 3 year starter. He's only given up, I think, 2 sacks this year. Will Campbell, he's been going all 3 years protecting for Jaden Daniels and some elite quarterbacks at LSU. Nussmeier this year. He's definitely gonna be a top 10 pick. It just depends on who's gonna pull the trigger on this offensive lineman. The biggest concern is going to be, is he a guard or tackle? Some people might not want to take him this high just because they might view him more as a guard. I think either way, if he works out, he's going to be one of the best offensive linemen. So you might as well, whether he's a tackle or a guard, I think he'll be fine at tackle, though. You've seen other guys like um, Tristan Wirfs was kind of a concern at first. Now he's an all pro left tackle in the NFL. So I think this is probably the second best pick that the Patriots can make right here. Going at left tackle, getting protection for your quarterback, Drake May. Also, once again, you still got Abdul Carter on the board. I probably would have. I'm probably gonna mock Abdul Carter to the Patriots here, just because their defense isn't very good as well. They have a very good defensive secondary, but their edge presence is missing. So I think Abdul Carter would fit here as well. That or I could see them taking a Kelvin Banks as well. More of an athletic type guy. Will Campbell, I feel like is a smaller technique guy. Kelvin Banks is more of the lengthy, freakish, athletic type offensive lineman that many are going to see in the pass rusher, in pass pro, stuff like that. So I don't have a problem with Will Campbell at all. This is probably going to be the more popular pick, this or Abdul Carter at number 4 to the Patriots. They could even get a weapon too. I feel like that's going to kind of get dialed down a little bit. I think they're going to wait. They may even move up in the end of the first round if a Emeka Ibuka falls. They could easily go Will Campbell or Abdul Carter at 4. And then if Emeka Ibuka falls or if Luther Burton starts to fall, I could easily see him packaging that early second round pick and try to move up to get one of those guys. Or they have $190 million in cap space and free agency. So you could easily go out and overpay a T. Higgins to be able to get you some weapons. So you could easily handle the weapon situation in free agency and still get your protection or edge rusher here at number 4. So moving on to number 5, you should have the Jacksonville Jaguars. And here's the guy that I've been talking about. I think he is overall the number 1 player in this draft, Abdul Carter. Watching him yesterday against Notre Dame, he pretty much dominated the whole game. He was either had great play recognition and seeing that the QB draws and everything like that was coming, and he was able to clog the middle, or he was able just to beat the tackle off the edge and get pressure on Riley Leonard and created uh, dozens of turnovers in that game. I think he's by far the best player. He's kind of like a skinnier Micah Parsons, but if you can play coverage. All right, Micah Parsons kind of flips one or two, but he's more of a necessary pass rusher. I feel like Abdul Carter is going to be almost that same exact type of build, just a better person that could drop back into coverage and play pass defense at the linebacker position. So I think he's one of those guys that gets flipped from one or the other, kind of exactly how Dallas used Micah Parsons. But this is a great pick for the Jaguars. They're honestly just letting the board fall to them. Some teams are taking needs, some teams best available, but at this point, if Abdul Carter falls in your lap, I think you take him. Some people might think that they need to take tackle here to protect Trevor Lawrence. Maybe they need to get another weapon across from Brian Thomas. But that defense really struggled. Once again, kind of like the Patriots, their secondary is decent with Tyson Campbell, and they had Trayvon Walker on the other side. I think this will be and Josh Allen. This could be a guy that you can throw in a rotation. You could put Josh Allen inside, have Trayvon Walker and Abdul Carter on the outsides, Abdul Carter in the middle of the field. I think this is just a great overall. Just take the best player on the board at this point. You're drafting best player available, not for need. So moving on to number 6. Another just take the best player available. Raiders, they're going Mason Graham here. Mason Graham is one of the better pass rushing defensive tackles in the last couple of years. He's going to be a top 10 pick. He could go 7 to the Jets. Jaguars could take him to go along with Traylon Walker and Josh Allen, but he's pretty much just going to be alongside Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby and create one of the better D lines in the league. He's going to cause a disruption. He's going to command double team blocks that D tackle needs to do. And he's going to be more of your interior guy. 3.5 sacks in college football from an interior defensive lineman. That's a great stat going on. So he's pretty much just going to clog the lanes, be able to play alongside Christian Wilkins, who's going to take up most of that and free up one of them to be able to go out and make plays. So if you have Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, and Mason Graham, no, you can't double team any of those guys. Because if you double team one of them, then the other one's just going to get through. If you try to chip block Max Crosby, Mason Graham, and Christian Wilkins are just going to wreak havoc. This is another case of just take best player available. Maybe they need another weapon. They would ideally want a quarterback, but in this draft class, you don't really have a quarterback to take. As we've mentioned, Cam Ward is number 1. Shador Sanders is but Giants need him, and he's already taken. The next quarterback would be Jalen Milroe, who I don't think is going to go till around middle of the second round, kind of like a Jalen Hurts did. He kind of reminds me of a Jalen Hurts type build. But so the Rams here or Raiders here, they're pretty much just taking best player available. That's what most of this draft is going to be instead of just drafting for need. This will be a great pick. This is kind of very ideal of what I think. Maybe they could have took a Will Johnson here. Will Johnson would probably be a good fit, but I think that's the two that you're looking at here is Mason Graham or Will Johnson. Either one, you're taking best player that you have ranked on the board. Moving on to number 7, you got the New York Jets. And the New York Jets, they have taken Jalen Walker. So this one's a little bit of an interesting one because they kind of have him mixed between a linebacker and an edge rusher. It's kind of mixed between both here. He did have 6.5 sacks this year, and he had 5 sacks last year. I think that they're gonna want to play him more at an edge rusher. But if he goes to the Jets still have Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald, so he could be pushed into that linebacker role. But I do think most teams are going to look at him more as an edge rusher on that dominant Georgia line that's just been kind of pushing him out. Here, I don't know if I necessarily agree with Walker. I think it's a little bit early. If I'm the Jets in this situation, you're losing DJ Reed in free agency. You're not going to sign him back. I think the best fit with Mason Graham and Abdul Carter gone, I think the best fit would be Will Johnson to put him across from Sauce Gardner, because then you have your two cornerbacks. You could pay Sauce Gardner and not have to worry about Will Johnson for about 4 years. So I could see the Jets taking edge rusher if it's like an insane talent like an Abdul Carter that falls to him. But I don't necessarily see Jalen Walker going here to the Jets unless they're picking to play him at linebacker, which they could be across from Jamie Sherwood, who's been a great fill-in. That was a switch from safety. But I do think that Will Johnson would fit them a little bit better with that cornerback need that they have. I think they're ideally looking more for a Mason Graham or a Abdul Carter. But in this case, in this instance, both those guys are taken. So then you're kind of just falling back to Will Johnson. I think those are the top three that the Jets are going to be looking at. They also don't have a GM yet. So who knows? Maybe they get a GM that wants to just build a dominant offense, and then they end up taking Ted McMillan here, or Tetro from Arizona. But it all depends. We kind of got to wait a little bit the next couple weeks and see what happens with the GM hiring here. Also with the Raiders, maybe the Raiders get a GM that they're hiring, and maybe the GM wants to go isn't a best player available type guy. They fall in love with a certain position group. I know Joe Douglas, who's the former Jets GM that just got fired. He was always about offensive line, defense line. So this would kind of make sense because he always wanted to upgrade offensive line and the trenches pretty much. But maybe we get a guy in here that really values another position, and maybe they kind of shock us here. We never know with the first time GMs. Moving on to number 8. Number 8, we have best player on the board here, Will Johnson. The Panthers would have a really good corner duo here with Will Johnson and J.C. Horn. I think once again, like I said, most of this draft is just going to be taking best player available, because it's not too crazy of a talented draft, but you do have your studs in here in the top 10 and top 15-ish. And then after that, I feel like it's kind of a little bit of a fall off. But Will Johnson would be a great addition to that defense. That was one of the worst in the NFL. I feel like you finally got something going with Bryce Young. David Canales is finally kind of developing him a little bit. Maybe they go weapon here. I think that's the other option they could have, because all you really got for Bryce Young right now is Chuba Hubbard in the backfield on his extension. And the only receivers you really got is Thielen and Xavier Legette. So, and David Moore, which those guys aren't necessarily, in my opinion, wide receiver one type guys. So I feel like maybe a McMillan here or a Luther Burton, maybe if they get, kind of ballsy with it and want to take a receiver. I feel like you're looking more for an offensive weapon on this one. But in this case, Mel Kiper's picking, and he's more of a best player available type guy, not so much of a need. So Will Johnson's still on the board at 8. You're pretty much just going to take him. I can't argue with it. But I do see the Panthers looking more for the offensive side, for like a weapon if Tyrone McMillan is still on the board. Number 9, you see here, Tedero McMillan is on the board, still looking. With Tedero McMillan, the Saints are taking him here. They're pretty much just looking to take best player. I do think if this is here and the Saints are taking him, I think it's more of a Kelvin Banks situation, because Trevor Penning has not been very well this year. He's kind of struggled at many times this year. I think it's time to move on to left tackle. And they already have Chris Olave. Kamara is getting older, I guess. But I do think that they're going to be wanting to take more of offensive line or defensive line to kind of add to the defense, or just be able to give weapons to Derek Carr and hopefully give him one last year before they move on to quarterback in next year. So I can see it where you're pretty much just taking the best guy on the board, but I do think that they'd be looking more at offensive line with Kelvin Banks instead, and trying to move on from Trevor Penning. Moving on to number 10. Number 10 right here, they have the Chicago Bears taking Kelvin Banks. I think that this is pretty obvious. The Bears are wanting to get offensive line upgrades. Caleb Williams got sacked at a historic rate this past year, and Kelvin Banks being there, I think he's going to be able to slide in either a left or right, and you might have to switch around a little bit because or you go into free agency and you sign an interior offensive lineman and then you move on from Braxton Jones. But in this case, I think it'd be a great pick for the Bears. They're pretty much just going to be eyeing either Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell, trying to get an upgraded offensive line so Caleb can at least stay upright. Because if he's constantly getting pressure, no matter who the coach is, if it's Ben Johnson, whoever they hire, if it's Pete Carroll, they're going to want to keep Caleb healthy. And if you don't upgrade the offensive line and he's just getting killed and sacked at a rate that he was this year, he's not going to be healthy enough, and he's just going to be throwing balls up, scared for his life. And Caleb's not going to be able to hit Keenan Allen or DJ Moore. So this is a smart pick here. This is the pick that I would have. Whoever's on the board between him or Will Campbell, this is who the Bears would take, 100%. Now, if both those guys are gone, I could see them trading back, which what I had in my mock draft, and maybe taking like a Tyler Booker, from Alabama, the more of the interior guy to kind of help out with their offensive line. Or I think a long shot here would be them taking edge, since there's since it's such an edge rich class and there's so many good edges in this class and pass rushers. I could see them, maybe if all the offensive linemen are taken, they can't get a trade back. They may take like a Michael Williams here, or maybe even another interior defensive lineman to kind of help out. But I think this is kind of the main pick, and it's kind of the obvious pick right now until we get further along into the draft process. Bears need an offensive lineman. Give him an offensive lineman if he's on the board, Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks. So that rounds out the top 10 of Mel Kiper's and Field Yates's top 10. I'm looking forward to when they release their full mock drafts. I'll be giving my reactions to that. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, concerns about my takes and think that you want to argue with me, or if you want to give me a compliment on my opinions, make sure to leave those down in the comments. Make sure you're subscribing and liking the videos to try to keep up with my NFL content I'm going to be releasing over the next couple of weeks. And as the NFL offseason starts to get going, make sure you subscribe and hit the outro.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got